Okay, so thank you for attending today's webinar. Today's webinar is a big title is actually the digital health mainstream healthcare. And as a part of it, at the starting, we are looking at the DTx and integrated RPM in as a subject matter. And then we are very interested in to how to DTx as adopted as mainstream healthcare. So we dream about actually the Hoda and me. We met twice in her beautiful mansion and then in a great meeting room about our vision, right? So maybe in sometime 10 years later that if you visit hospital and doctor to see you and then finally decide to the what you have some disease and some treatment plan and then and the part of that actually DTx is included as user, right? So you just naturally to like prescribe some specific drugs and then patient have a drug through the pharmacy or the delivered to him by the online pharmacy, and then it will interact and treat it. So DTx is not the option, but it's part of like the your everyday practice, and then the patient naturally accept that DTx as a part of the treatment, and then we started to treat, right? I don't know how long it will take, right? Because recently I've talked with not just DTx, I've talked with many other sectors like telemedicine and other the we call digital health other sectors, and then I just exchanged our idea about how long will it take, right? So actually, I'm going to talk about more bigger scale like DTx, digital health as a mainstream at the end of this month, but actually that this is good starting point to focus on DTx today. So to how to adopt, right? So that means it should be included in the everyday workflow, the doctor and patient engagement, right? So we are looking at it and then we found out that what really needed, right? So this is the actually Hoda and I collaborate a couple of months to to look at it, and then finally that we have some concrete thing that can be shared with outside the world to share the insight, and then to ask to join our ventureship, and then collaborationship and partnership. Okay, okay. So I will start from. Let me check that. I will make this screen as very small. Um, okay, so as I told you that this is the result of our collaboration, so we will discuss about some specific topics that especially for the relevance for each person's expertise. So that we have a four big agenda. And I will share with my 1 year's exploring of the DTx in the deep level. So I will share briefly about what the current status of this digital health ecosystem and also remote patient monitoring ecosystem. And then Hoda will cover her insight about the AI, precision medicine, and digital therapeutics. And again, that based on this, actually the Hoda to have a very, very good insight about how to make DTx as adopted as mainstream. So he will share about the strategy, and based on strategy, actually, I'm in charge of the implementing this strategy as a specific platform. So I will talk about the adoption platform. Okay, so first part is the global DTx and RPM Ecosystem. So basically, this is a second quarter result, but because I'm now revising for the three quarter, but very be similar because I include more startups globally. But usually you can see that it's a global ecosystem, and I just found that about 200 something, right? Because I just include about 210, but 210, but I think that there will be more that I mix, or some are maybe in the early stage or something like that. So I just categorize them by health condition they targeting because a DTx is aiming at some treatment, right? So they want to be to intervention to through the software way and including some kind of device, and then they want to be treat the symptoms, the health condition based on some kind of like the therapeutic logic. So so actually, I just publish this one as the accumulate to have to industry people about what the status, as I just said, like a global digital therapeutic startup yellow book. So I I really look at the whole the individual company and then what their business model, their product, technology innovation, their patent and investment status and key executives. Especially I link to their LinkedIn profile and the market, client, and clinical trials and compliance, and then like a reimbursement status. So this is a whole picture. If you want to look at what the current status at the individual company level, this will be a guidebook for that. And then, so I just look at the based on health condition, the majority, you see that this among about the 200 startups, their business model that they're targeting mental health is more than majority. It's kind of like more than half. So mental health is one of the key area DTx startups are looking at to find out the best solution, best therapeutic solution for the various type of the mental health problem like depression, anxiety, stress, PTSD. You can think about many. And another thing was a chronic condition like a diabetes, hypertension. So it's everyday people like a patient tangled with this. They were very closely related to your living style or something like that. So the chronic condition is the second one. And then many other topics. For example, cognitive health like Alzheimer's and the Parkinson's disease and pain management like to avoid opioid like abuse. So they provide like a pain management, particularly this area utilizing we call extended reality technology and development disorders like ADHD, autism, or some learning defect, or something like that. And more addictive behaviors, something like smoking and alcoholing, or the like opioid use, or something like that. So drug use, abuse. This topic was another one topic. And the neurological health, usually they care about the neural rehabilitation. So means that, for example, you have a stroke, and then after that, actually, they have some you cannot move your half of body or something like that. So it's related to your muscle, and then you relate to your cognitive system, you relate to your neurological system. So they touch on that topic. And other health condition, many like rehabilitation, internal medicine, cancer, and the sleep disorders, even eye health. And then particularly recently, I found that the woman's health type is a topic the like the lot of the startups touch on. So this is the one actually that I provide the detail about example, what kind of type of the disease or the disorders the DTx are looking at it. And then I just also look at what the current status in terms of the product, right? Because so particularly, typically, the most of me about 80% of the DTech startups focus on one particular health condition. For example, is cognitive health it's Alzheimer, or it is like a diabetes, or it's like a hypertension, cardiac like a disease, or something like that. But some company also have a several, right? So one company can have one like a key product, or maybe several, right? So, but anyway, because I look at the particularly I'm interested in is the whether let it go to market. So let it go to market means that DTx as is characteristic, right? Because I'm not going to touch upon maybe the whole I will briefly talk about what the scope of the DTx we are going to touch, but usually the in the bigger the sometimes actually confused with the software as a medical device with the DTx, right? There are some common area and some differences. So software medical device is a legal term particularly for its FDA defined as software medical device means that like a it's like a traditional medical device under like a scrutiny of the FDA clearance, but basically they're delivering the therapeutic mechanism is not hardware, it's a software, right? So some of the like a DTX is within the category or not, because for example, that so for among the DTX product, so I saw that about 70% is purely software app, but many actually integrate with some device, right? It's a proprietary device or it's a like the consumer device like a smartphone or wearable device you can buy in outside. But anyway, so some are overlap, some are not overlap, right? So that's one that many people, even the expert, the confused about the defining it. And another thing that I noticed that someone actually that I share this one, and I invite a lot of the DTX community and other healthcare community to talk about this one. And a lot of people, someone that particularly they say, oh, we are actually fit into like the very rigorous definition of the DTX, right? It means that the intervention, treatment should be clear and then clinical trials, everything. But I think that there should be not restrict because what I found that, for example, a lot of the DTX include some assessment because this the DTX usually the DTX treatment it's not just just a one-time treatment. Like you have like a drop, right? Because it just have it, right? Or injection, not that way. Because it is interact with the patient. And they iteratively looking at the patient status and sensing and then accumulate data and then based on data and then reiterate the best option treatment. So it kind of like interact way. So essential part of this is not just treatment, but assessment, whether what correctly actually the when I apply something like the therapeutic the means. For example, I apply for the gamification of the game to the patient, and then what happened is that like you through the game for example, you're a ADHD patient and then you provide the therapeutic game and then you perform, right? After that, actually what the software doing is that measure your performance and then measure your current status. And then they reiterate what will be the content and then provide you. So assessment is essential part. So the purely like intervention is not strictly defined as DTX. It should be loose. For example, another thing is that recently I found a trend that these DTX also include monitoring, right? Because it monitor patient status, right? So it's overall also like a remote patient monitoring in some way. So that's why extend my view of DTX is not strictly just intervention through the like a therapeutic treatment, but actually I include assessment and the monitoring part. That's why that I include the RPM, and sometimes I also include the company actually the monitoring and the assessment. So that's when I depend I define it and I define my scope of my research. So I skip over that, and then many companies actually they're working with a pharmaceutical company with usually that traditionally the DTx is a therapeutics. Therapeutics is a kind of like an analog with a drug. So many startup in DTx area or want with the collaboration of pharmaceutical company. But I think the recent trend is not just the DTx seen as a drug, but it's like a therapeutic means that, for example, CBT is not drug based, right? Because CBT is your behavior has to have you changing your behavior. So recently I found that the trend is not just with like a drug like a characteristic to look at it, but actually the treatment way, right? A therapeutic way. So there are a lot of company actually to collaborate with the clinic. So this is a recent trend I found. And then what happened? Yeah, this is one we should see that. There are several actually. I saw that I look at the like for example fundraising space that I look at the over 200 startups globally and their funding status, and then half them are still in early stage. Means that the funding stage is for example pre-seed or seed, and then about 30% is a good phase. Like some they have some equity, so, and then so share with the venture capital to have a series A or B or something like that. I've never seen that the beyond the E or something like that. But usually up to this day, actually, some company tried IPO to get the like open financial market. So recently we saw several like a peer therapeutics or Pioneer in opioid use, like a time and the better therapeutics in diabetes, and then in Akili is a very famous in ADHD game and Art Life Science. But among them, three companies actually that have a difficulty in financial problem. So you know that Peer did bankrupt and Better bankrupt. And Akili is acquired by another company in the very low price, a very low valuation. And Atari Life has a losing their revenue, right? So that's the current situation. So that's what actually that motivate that to any solution for this kind of situation. That solution is ecosystem because this ecosystem is still not there, right? Because if you look at the because I have 30 years in many different type of industry, particularly technology based before I enter into this healthcare area. So I've seen many like emerging technologies and grown up and then put into like the as a mainstream business and they make money and then circulate. So that the first thing is to this ecosystem not yet there to be like generate enough financial resources, right? Money. So and that means that the way actually the to generate revenue is to put into like existing like money making industry. So we're looking at the like this is DTx. So you can think about for example like a drugs like a treatment like how they can generate the revenue. Like through the like patient, doctor, patient, the interaction and the patient and reimbursement, like the payers and pay for patient like pay by the out of pocket, right? So cash flow should be through that, and then that means the ecosystem is not there. That the kind of like workflow is not there. So we are very interested in how to include this as a mainstream workflow. That was the topic we are going to talk about today. And this is one situation. Peer treatment is actually the second life is bankrupt. So actually, it was acquired by some company. Actually, the Pursue Care. The Pursue Care is a telemedicine, telehealth company. So they acquired it. So I always show you that recently there was some convergence among the different sectors. The one difficult is that DTx is combined with the telehealth to have a virtual care with including the like treatment method as a DTx. And then also like Click Therapeutics have a to acquire better asset in the diabetic obesity or something like that. They recently get the FDA clearance because actually the clear already FDA clearance stage, so it was make it easier. So this is one way actually that they rebuy through another innovation circle, right? Okay, so mental health, why interest? Because of recent CMS, because like reimbursement like is very important, and then so then still there are struggling to get the good reimbursement way, right? If you say like CMS code, we say the but recent trend was that because finally for the mental health area, there was a CMS code allowed. So you will see that this is the currently available product. Actually, I missed someone. Recently, there was so another company I will show later, but they have a game-based the treatment for the stress and anxiety, something like that. But yeah. Okay, so for the remote health monitoring, it's a very well compared to DTx. This is well set up because of they have already have a CMS code reimbursed, and then usually they are monitoring characteristic to easier for them. For example, the make more like less strict to FDA clearance than DTx. So usually they're through like usually the some company actually have a 510(k), but usually they are like just exempt or something like this. So that's it. And another way is that recent trend of the in the mainstream has they call hospital at home. So hospital at home actually the very good incentive by the payers. So this is the one very good the mechanism, the tools that can include in the hospital at home. So this state actually I look at their so I have a difficulty to make this one was that because I accumulate some data to analyze maybe 6 months ago and then start to analyze and then during my analysis actually the some companies and not anymore any startup for example some company already been to IPO some company acquired by the big company so I started from like 100 more than 100 company and then reduced because they are not anymore startups. So this is a final one. I'm going to publish in this reporter. So reduced number about the 60 or something like that, but it's very good in good shape. So I also did the same thing for this. And I'm going to skip this one. I just analyzed what the current state and future direction for the everyone. But this is one actually RPM, RTM. So therapeutic treatment the monitoring is part of the RPM. So they have a CPT code already. So this is good to explore. So there are many. What I'm thinking about the combining the DTx and an RPX is very good advantage. So that's why that in our show later about our like a platform, actually the recently we filed a patent and then included this RPM as like a natural part of a DTx. So whether DTx as the included in the like their own device or they can be included in the like a traditional like you can have a consumer market you can buy consumer market like a smartphone or a wearable device or the PCs whatever also can prescribe the depending on the health condition this RPM. So that's one actually that we include in our the platform and so the naturally included in our pattern application. But so this is the one very good. And then I found that some startup already explore this space. So I saw dozen already have included as a part of the DTx as RPM as one of the fundamental function of their DTx like a product. So this is one trend I found that. Okay, so I set the stage that what the current ecosystem, what the direction, what the motivation we are going to talk about today. And then Hoda will talk about her insight about the what if the DTX will be future and what really important in healthcare. So AI, precision medicine, and digital therapeutics. Hoda?
Great, thanks. So Alex has done all of this research, and when people talk about digital health technologies, it's a very broad subject. And for today's discussion, we're really going to talk about those therapeutics that are found on apps to treat chronic disease and the wearables for remote patient monitoring. So I just wanted to focus us a little bit on our talk today. Next slide. So the intersection of precision medicine, the DTXs, and AI was of great interest to both of us. So Alex did all of this research. Those of you who know me from Meditech, I've done a lot of work with genomics and precision medicine, and of late a little bit more with AI. And I wanted to sort of intersect all of those things together and talk about how we might use all of these things and include them into the workflow. So when we talk about precision medicine, we're really talking about looking at every component that we know about a patient and really coming up with a treatment plan that's best suited to that patient based on what we know about them. And when we talk about the intersection of AI, what we want to do is basically use all of the research that's being done in the AI world with drug discovery, with genetic discovery, with pharmacogenomics, with all of those things together and try to insert them into the healthcare process and insert them along with DTxs and wearables into the workflow for the physicians. Next slide. So when we take a look at where we're going with this. So imagine now we have a patient in the middle. So you see the cartoon of the female with the patient in the middle. And the electronic health record is a very powerful tool. So I really want to thank all the vendors out there, Meditech especially, for the work that they've done in creating an electronic health record that contains and collects vital signs, lab data, imaging data, social determinants, medications, allergies, problems, all of those things. So that's some of the patient's data. But then we have other data about the patient that isn't in the electronic health record. Sometimes genetic data is in the record, sometimes it's not. Sometimes, are they adhering with their medication and taking their meds appropriately? Do we know that information? It's not really in the electronic health record. Then we have patient-generated data like digital therapeutics, like we talked about, these apps and these wearables. That's not in the electronic health record yet. So we want to set up a platform where we merge all of these things together so we get a full picture of the patient. So now, if we take a look at introducing AI and multimodal health data analysis, so things like Gemini and all of those AI actually can look at uncoded data, coded data, imaging data, all of these different pieces of data, and then suggest the optimal treatment and precision treatment options for the physician. So we're going to look at combining all of this data, set up the treatment options for the physicians. We can do that via order sets, clinical guidelines, and put all of these things into perspective. And as the physician prescribes things for the patients, they're going to prescribe medications, they're going to prescribe apps, they're going to prescribe wearables, for example. So we really want to make sure that the digital therapeutics are part of the clinical decision support and the treatment options. So how are we going to do that? As I mentioned, we want to make sure that that evidence is there, that information is actually put in place for the physicians to actually take a look at it and prescribe it and make sure. So half the problem with the therapeutics and remote monitoring is looking at the evidence and making sure that the evidence actually supports what it is that they're going to do. And do I have another slide, Alex? Did you take that one out? Yeah, you know what? This is a repeat. Can you go one more forward?
It's actually I
No.
divided by this one as yeah.
Oh, okay. So let's examine that. These are a little bit not in the right order, but that's okay. So if you take a look at digital therapeutics, there are over 350,000 digital therapeutics on the market today. Now, how do we know if any of them actually improve outcomes? That is the real question. And if we know physicians, they are not going to use any products or prescribe any products that they don't know are actually going to improve the outcomes for their patients. Next slide. So what we want to do is make sure that we come up with a strategy that looks at all of these things. So when we look at the adoption of these things, we want to make sure that physicians know about them. We want to make sure that they know about the transparency and the evidence behind these digital therapeutics and remote patient monitors. We also want to make sure that they're integrated and scalably integrated into their workflow. And we also want to make sure that they're going to be reimbursed via a formulary. So these digital therapeutics and remote patient monitors and wearables need to make it into their workflow. They need to make it into their order sets, their clinical guidelines. They need to make it into their formulary. So it needs to inherently work within the construct of the EHR that they're using for their prescription and daily care. So that is really what we need to do here. So we need to sort of create this platform and this infrastructure to make sure these things move forward and move into the workflow. So next slide. So the adoption strategy really requires us to review and validate the evidence and the efficacy of these digital therapeutics and monitors. And not only should we be reviewing the evidence of the efficacy, but we should look at, are they safe for the patient to use? Are privacy and security concerns actually met? Are they usable by the patient? Are they reimbursable? So along with reviewing the evidence, we have to review all of those other components to make sure that they're going to be not only adopted by the physicians, but are going to be safe for the patients to use. So once we do that, we need to curate a formulary and add that to the formerly service vendor products like First Data Bank, for example. Need to add the digital therapeutics and the remote patient monitors into the standard formularies. Why do we need to do that? We need to do that because it needs to be integrated. That is the way we integrate it into the workflow of the physicians. Right now, the formulary is integrated into the EHR. It's a drug formulary, so why not have a DTx formulary? And that DTx formulary would be validated DTxs. Just like we validate the use of drugs, we validate the use of the digital therapeutics. And in order to do best practices, the digital therapeutics that are known to create better outcomes based on the evidence should be included also in the order sets and in the clinical guidelines. As we know, EHRs also include clinical guidelines that come from either Provation or Elsevier or Zanx or other or guidelines that the institutions create on their own by looking at the evidence. So these components, the digital therapeutics, the wearables, the remote patient monitoring should be included as part of the guidelines. So as the physicians are creating a treatment plan, they see these options as part of treatment and therefore can write a prescription for those things. So the other part of this is to create a platform that not only allows the physicians to basically prescribe the particular digital therapeutic, but that data coming back from the digital therapeutic, as Alex talked about, on the assessment and bringing back the information as to the efficacy for that particular patient is brought back into the EHR and looked at as part of the overall data set about that particular patient. And then we would use AI tools to continuously monitor the formulary, monitor the order sets, and analyze the patient-generated health data. Next slide. And before we go on to that slide, go back 2 slides, Alex. One more, sorry. One more. Okay, we're back here. So now that I sort of described a little bit of the strategy, I think the slide makes a little bit more sense. So as the physician is working with the patient, they're going to analyze their information and all of the information about that patient, and the AI multimodal data analysis is going to specifically create a precision treatment options for that patient. Those options would be included in the clinical guidelines and in the formulary and provide some clinical decision support. The physician then creates a prescription using e-prescribing, and they're going to be able to prescribe the medications or that DTx that we included in the DTx formulary or the RPM or the wearable that's going to be included as part of that formulary. AI will then grab some data with regards to did they take their medication? Is that app in use? What's going on? With treating that chronic condition, what's going on with any of the biomarkers that we're getting with the wearables. And AI will basically send that information to this other data section, which is patient generated data, and then also analyze that information. The one thing that we added to this equation with the AI and bringing data back to patient generated health information is we don't want every single piece of data that's coming in, like how many steps you walked today and yesterday and the day before are less important than trends of information. So we would basically put the trend of information into patient generated data and then combine that information with the EHR data and complete the cycle. So this is where the platform that we're talking about building is putting in all of these components so that, number one, we review the evidence and provide a formulary that is of effective digital therapeutics, and then have the ability now to make sure that when the physician prescribes that digital therapeutic, just like they do with medications, we can monitor the data coming back from the patient and to keep tailoring the treatment of that patient based on that particular data. The issue, I think, that has happened with some of the digital therapeutics companies that have gone out of business is they expect physicians to, number one, know about them, which they don't. Number two, they're not in their general workflow, and they've not been proven or shown with regards to their outcomes. What is going to be beneficial for the patient. So. What we've learned, and I'll say what I've learned, and anybody that's in the EHR business, is if it's not in front of the physician and if it's not incorporated in the workflow, they're not going to use it. And on top of not having it in the workflow, if it hasn't been proven to be beneficial to improve outcomes, they're going to ignore it. So we have to sort of combine both of those things together in order to move these digital therapeutics into the mainstream. The addition of AI adds another layer of analysis and specificity so that when we talk about precision medicine, it really is specific to that patient, what they're taking, their genetic makeup, all of their medications, and everything that we're doing to monitor, how well they're managing their health or their chronic disease. So then we can go into the architecture. So you can get to your architecture slide. So this is a pretty busy slide, and it has a lot of components. I tried to describe them pictorially, but it involves having an EHR with guidelines, order sets, formularies, using the infrastructure for e-prescribing that's inherent in the EHR, being able to make sure that the patient is involved with this and that the patient can actually get the therapeutic and the DTx and get reimbursement for it, and that we grab patient-generated data and feed it back and forth with the EHR and be able to look at real-world evidence about that patient and use AI to analyze that information. So there's a lot of arrows here, but Alex will talk a little bit more about the infrastructure. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, Alex, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, so we discussed about this strategy and how to implement. So we have intensive discussion about it and end up being as a patent. So include all the features that we are aiming at to be DTx and RPM as a mainstream healthcare workflow. So I'm in charge of the actual implementation. So based on Hulda's strategy and her very good picture about what kind of architecture to be included, and actually design this system. So basically, this is one the thing that the difference between the previous one, for example, that this is one actually recently published DTx into a workflow by the Digital Therapeutic Alliance. But if it looks like very complex, but actually the many components actually the combined in our platform. So for example, that there was some negotiation for the to be included in the formulary. And then in the formulary, there was the estimation of the evaluation of formulary to be included, and then we put into the EHR system. Actually, with a lot of function actually done by FHS. So our working is to provide the DTx formulary based on our evaluation criteria. We develop our own DTx formulary evaluation like a framework. We found that this process required a very time consuming and then human resource required. So to be like for example currently yeah I found that about the 50 that I will show later that we scrutinize what the current like DTx RPM can be included in this healthcare workflow if it is launched right now. So we found about the 50. And then if you think about the you do manually to analyze all this steps, I will show you what kind of metrics you should consider. But it's a time consuming. A lot of we saw the several report from other institutions to review some specific health condition, and we found that they spend a lot of time and resources, human resources and other computing resources to that. So we find out to make easier to utilizing AI. I'm expertise in, and I have 30 years expertise in technology. So based on my understanding that this can be, I've seen this kind of complex can be make easier in other industry. So based on that, actually, I design how to make this procedure to make easier to utilizing AI to make more simplify and then to make more effective way to generate. And then another beauty is a DTx prescription interface. So this interface is linked with the EHR provider manufacturer. So it'll be helpful like all this process be coordinated. So this is one part actually that you see that in the alliance the some workflow actually this actually representing so many different steps described in here. So we actually what we have done is to make a simplify and then put into like some automation step. So the complex like looks like a complex like workflow that provide the industry expert in the through the DTx association. We just provide a prep to make the step easier and then make the simplify. So we are very similar. So the function is very similar, and then workflow is very similar, but we make them as much easier to understand in a like a good view, and then a process can be like automate in many ways. So you can understand fundamentally the doing the same function. And then also we need some collaboration. So we need to integrate like a EHR system vendors and then workflow solution vendors, and then particularly payers, right? So this whole process will be interrelated, and then our platform actually provide the supporting these players can be communicate and interact to make this happen. So DTx and RPM can be included in the current healthcare system is very easily, right? So so dream big. So then I will go you overview about what the detail, right? So actually, the what kind of like evaluation framework? So there are many things I'm not going to talk about, but you can think about many things like particularly the DTx require the clinical validation, so regulatory certification require the privacy, security, and cost, and then integration and usability, UX, and other functionality is required. And particularly yesterday, actually, I found that this is the one in other people, the research group done is the actually the bridging the gap on the mental health and substance use. As Hoda already talked about, there are 100,000 apps, particularly for example, just the mental health. I saw that there are thousands just a topic like mindfulness or mediation, something like that. Usually they call wellness app. So they are not directly to be included as a therapeutic plan, but they generally people think about they are good to do, to you have like a meditation, you have a stress, and you have meditation or something like that. So they define by the like some were loose, like not particularly very like tightly in the therapeutic intervention, and they call like a wellness app, and the clinical app is very similar to our definition. So they have like over industry expert to, and I'm surprised that their view is very similar to ours. So we just confirm that our approach was right based on because Hoda and I to this research based on the existing literature or other people's like insight, but they actually rigorously research the more systematic than ours, more using the more resources. But actually, they turn out to be very similar to the key evaluation criteria, very similar to ours. So this is one proof that is happy to share that our methodology is also another very good to be applied right now. So based on that, actually, we find out what could be the candidate for DTx formulary can include it, and that can be practiced right now, right? So very, for example, this is only for targeting in the US market. So they require FDA clearance all. So this is all FDA clear and clinically valid and then a criteria meet with various conditions. So ADHD, Alzheimer's, you see the scope, right? They can cover physical, mental, and many area of the health conditions. So I'm really excited that it can be included in the pilot, right? Because so next step will be we are going to design actually some actual implementation and can be tested in the pilot. So pilot design, implementation design. So this can be a good candidate can be included in the start. So maybe we can think about like depression, anxiety. Already they have the CMS code, so that can be included in reimbursement. This is a good start. Can be we can think about depression, anxiety is one thing, but there is another thing maybe cardiac care and other stuff. Actually, already there in FDA clearance is available. So, for example, substance use disorder is one good topic that we can include. So this is the one ecosystem that currently available. But if you go global, the situation is much better, but I'm not sure because of their like adoption strategy is different. So, for example, that in Germany, for example, United States, why the conflict? Because in the United States, is the FDA clearance, clinical validation, reimbursement are independent. They are not linked. So somebody called that this the U.S. healthcare system fragmented because they are not ready. For example, I'm going to have another webinar in sometime in the 2 weeks later about the topic, why they fragmented. But actually, the problem is that because of the different healthcare system, for example, Germany and South Korea particularly, they are like very public life. So government intervention and their like reimbursement is through the government entity. So for once they have like cleared by the government's regulation body, actually the automatic get the title as a reimbursement. So some of the professors, DIGA project is the same thing in the Germany, in South Korea is the same thing, right? So but in United States is different. That's why that even if you have a FDA clearance, but the reimbursement is another layer of the story that you need to think about it. Okay, so just think of clear like what kind of thing you can do. So we just based on some well known in mainstream in the literature. The OCEBM is a mainstream like Oxford the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine. They provide like some clinical evidence how to evaluate. And then we just using that concept, and then we put into like for our proposed digital therapeutics the digital diagnosis and RPM, the different proposed, then we can have some kind of like a scrutiny. Then you can choose, pick and choose based on your proposed. Another thing is what kind of like of regulated pathway that you should think about it, right? Because usually the 510K because for example you have some previous similar device exists and good to start not just from the scratch, like for example de novo is required a scratch, and then well like a pre-market approval is another one and something like that. And another thing that you can think about is the private security. So there are many different criteria we can think about it, particularly in the United States, HIPAA, and globally is like another one. But and another thing that the industry is a standard. Another thing that I'm thinking about, you can think about many different type of the criteria you can pick and choose. And then another thing that we are thinking about is that not just in the like adoption, whether we can our frame can also use in the product life cycle management. So this is one thing that you can think about, like what kind of thing you can think about in the product to development to the market and then test it and actually be put into in the mainstream. Right. And then I just put into like our firm can have to the DTx lifecycle management, for example, that our platform utilizing the real life data from the patient and our cloud analyze using the AI can and then provide the real life evidence. And then it will feedback to the like DTx company, and then they can be improve their product. So it can be like I call like integrating clinical trials plus real world applications, integrating. This is very analogous like a recent trend in the clinical trials integrate with the drug discovery at the same time. And also we can think of as assessment process for the data integration have, and then so we provide this like a powerful insight to be included in the product life cycle. So this is one thing. And also like here that another thing that our platform not just to include it in the workflow, actually this is powerful. So our AI analyzed the gathered data, and then not just only the not just for the get the insight about how to improve the patient treatment and then feedback to them, also like provide the real world evidence, and then utilizing API can utilizing, for example, research institution and other company, drug discovery company, other company can utilize this. So for regulatory reimbursement framework, why they fragmented and what's the best strategy? I'm also a New York State attorney, so I'm attorney. I'm not going to have to provide any legal advice, but to view of the like I'm also like an innovator and the developer. So view of the not lawyer, but as a high tech professional, but by the view of I'm also like trained as a lawyer, so I will provide a very easy to understand why that's what the current regulatory oversight pathway product, particularly that the reimburse like a strategy that I can provide maybe later. Okay, so I done all. Okay, we left about 7 minutes more. So is there any question from audience, or you wanna just comment or share your insight? Just
Yes,
speak
we had
out.
a couple of we had a couple of comments in the chat. One of them was about making sure that the apps and the wearables are usable by the patient. So, part of the evaluation process that we'll do is a usability test and review as well, because that's going to be a key component. If the patients don't use it, then again, it becomes worthless. Um, and the other part of the equation, Matthew Holt talked about reimbursement. Yeah, so that's going to be a key point. So part of the efforts that we're going to move forward with are, and the reason why Alex spent some time on the mental health apps is right now there is reimbursement for the mental health apps. And what we're hoping to do with the evaluation process of the evidence is to show that evidence to CMS, to the payers, so that it'll be included as part of the payer formulary, so they will be reimbursed as well. So these are kind of some key elements of adoption is making sure that the apps and therapeutics are usable, and that the payers will pay for it. So that's part of this effort. We're talking a little bit more technically today, but there's a lot of other things in the background that we're doing to move these things forward. And with regards to inclusion in the physician clinical guidelines, we are talking to some order set and guideline vendors to get their take on their assistance in reviewing the evidence as well and including them in part of the packages that they offer to the electronic health vendors. And then also talking to those institutions who create their own guidelines. A lot of the academic institutions create their own guidelines, and speaking with them about including the therapeutics as part of the guidelines that they're putting in front of their physicians. So we have a question also that is, what's our take on ORCHA's Health App Library? So we have taken a look at ORCHA, their app library, and they're interesting because a lot of their items from their library, they're used by the NHS in the UK. What we haven't seen is sort of transparency of the review of any of the evidence. So one of the things that is very critical to physicians, and I know this because of the 37 years that I've worked with physicians like Dr. Daly, who's on the call as well, is, show me the evidence, and I'm not going to use it in the transparency of that evidence. So I think part of the view of what some other vendor has tried to do in this space is there's not a clear view of what they reviewed, how they categorize, and what kind of validation they've done with any of these therapeutics. And again, being a clinical person myself, if I don't see the correct evidence, I'm not going to use it. Are you including HR? Yes. So there is a Senate bill that's out there to have Medicare actually pay for digital therapeutics. So we're watching it closely. Right now, the Digital Therapeutics Association is lobbying in Congress to make sure that that legislation moves forward. They're also lobbying payers. So although we're not personally, Alex and I are not personally doing the lobbying, organizations like DTA and the DIME are actually doing that lobbying. So we're cheering them on from the background. Do you expect that the use of AI and integration of patient-generated other data, not typically in the EHR, such as medication compliance, will contribute more precise HCC coding and predictive modeling? Absolutely. I think the one thing that makes me a little hesitant about AI in healthcare right now is most of the data that they're using in the large language models, a lot of it is EHR data. And as I talked about previously, that's only the data that comes from the patient when they're in front of a clinician. It isn't the data, the everyday data of their life when they're not seeking care. And that's what we need to get our hands on. So I think this effort will also contribute to creating a body of evidence of more data about individuals and add that to the cachet of information that AI uses to make some of its assessments and some of its models. So I think this is a critical element. Without getting this information from validated sources like these validated digital therapeutics that we're talking about, I think you're going to have a lot of noise in some of it. In all of your years of experience with DTx, which product has the most profound effect on the member's life with high adherence and adoption and ROI? I actually can't answer. That's a really good question, Dr. Farrow. I can't answer that only because I've only been working with these digital therapeutics with real evidence for maybe the past 4 or 5 years. So I have seen things like there's a product from Rimidi, RIMIDI, for treating and tracking diabetics that's been actually out in the market for a while that has evidence behind it and so forth that's working pretty well. But it's still something that needs to grow a little bit more.
Yeah, in addition to that, actually, for me, actually, because not just for me, but actually, not not many DTx products actually put into the market to generate real life like a test, right? So only some of the recently the ADHD for the Endeavor by the Ackley put into like over the counter market and test by some patient for the ADHD children and something like. But no actually none in the real life actually the reporting from the vendors about they're actually effective or not. So it's not can nobody actually can tell about now. But based on my research, also patent attorney, so look at all the patents of the current DTx product, and then the by the mechanism actually they actually designed by this one high adherence adoption and ROI in design way in patent. Just buy that feature and implement as it is. Yeah, it should be, but not yet. Nobody can actually sure this. So that's why that we want to test it in the market in the pilot based on our like a criteria to find out the best option and then put into like a doctor's like a front end and then test with a patient and then want to generate real life evidence to whether they are effective. But another thing that I found that why this is my honest, maybe not many people share with me is that actually I think that the many people actually overemphasize over like just grown up the effect of DTX. That's my the personal insight. I've been looking at the 1 year, so look at the detail because based on my 30 years experience, usually the one happen is that DTX is best performed when it be combined with a traditional treatment. That's what I found that. So it's a traditional drug treatment or like a CBT, like it's a mental health, like a therapy. There are so for example that what I found that a lot of the DTX based on traditional standard of care. The standard of care actually the complementary by the DTX. So if you just claim that this, some maybe that DTX can be like more than like a traditional in the outcome, but usually I found that their use is very limited and then maybe useful, but it's still complementary. And then the best, the healthcare plan, the treatment plan should be in combination of traditional and then DTX. And then they can be like optimize the combination of them will be best for their patients. So that's one. So I think that we can excite because once we our dream to implement this one and actually to put into like in the pilot then we will see that what really nature of the DTX and then what's the best way actually to utilize DTX as a part of the mainstream treatment planning, right? So I'm really excited to work with Hoda about that because you see the Hoda is very good insight about this healthcare industry and how to utilize DTX and something like that. I'm a 30 years experience in high tech, so I'm very expertise in implementation, put it in the commercial line. So we are waiting for someone actually that can be like participate with our like mentorship and then put into like this as a real life application. So we are welcome anyone comment or the petition participate with our mentorship or whatever sponsor that we just welcome.
And,
If I,
and what, go
if I
ahead, Dr.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
my typing's not that great, and I talk we're in the market now where we're whole person health, so diabetes, hypertension, pre-diabetes, musculoskeletal. We believe the body heals itself, and we just help the person change their lifestyle. And to us, the DTX is the tool that helps us get the information and communicate information faster versus a standalone product. The app is not going to make you eat your veggies. I don't care. It's just not going to happen, and it has to be very easy. So what we've done is just made it through text message and online chat, so they can take pictures of their lunch, their dinner, take pictures of their labs, their medications, even their household products, and we're ingesting all that data into AI. Which that's why I love AI as a person who, we're serving thousands and thousands of members, building apps and connectivities to EHR and AHR. It's overcomplicated. It's too regulated. It slows the process down. Now that I could take a picture and it can upload that information and use it real time, much better application. So I'm interested in seeing how we could work together. The only way I've gotten payment from these big organizations or employer groups is to go pay for performance. That's why I asked about looking at therapeutics at ROI. We basically guarantee that we're going to get them to drop 5, 7, 10% weight loss, drop medications, drop blood labs and such. That's the only way I found them to get to pay for it. So I like the idea of the DTx and getting it proven and they have to cover it, but I'd rather go the direction where they want to cover it because it actually produces, outcomes.
Yeah, I think you're sort of that's another avenue. I think we have to try multiple avenues. So you're absolutely right. So working with Medicare Advantage programs and value-based care contracts, I think is another way to do it versus just the direct commercial payer or CMS payer. So we agree with you. So our customer base is the providers, the payers, the value-based care companies and any of the contracts that they're doing there. So you're correct in showing that it can improve the outcomes. So I think we definitely agree with you. I think the area that is sort of less tested is a lot of physicians aren't going to do what you're doing. The texting back and forth. They don't really have time to do that. Even their nurse practitioners or their care managers don't have time to do that. So these apps should facilitate some of these things. And that's what we're hoping that some of these apps will actually facilitate not only just the communication, but the gathering of data and the monitoring of that data.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And now because of AI, our coaches don't even have to text back and forth anymore because the AI is on 24/7 and it's now
And
they
the
just
data coming
now they
in,
just
right?
give them a summary for a phone call. Now we still have human component to it because you need the empathy, the sympathy, the accountability. And to your point, now they can show up to a doctor's office with a summary of everything that actually happened real world and their data that the doctor can make a decision. And honestly, if we're getting even further ahead of ourselves, the AI, the doctor will be AI, right? The doctor will say, wait a minute, before you even show up to that office, I've already kind of figured out exactly what needs to be changed here. We need to jump on a call just for regulatory purposes, but we probably don't even need to have a conversation because,
Right. Well,
you know,
hopefully there's still a conversation. So
I mean, I
I
mean,
still do that. But
but
yes,
but
AI
think
will.
about it. But think
Yeah.
about it a second. So one doctor's got to make a decision, or this data can have a million doctors helping you make a decision. So there's still going to be that conversation, but it's a much more informed, and it's good for the consumer because the consumer normally goes, "Yeah, I went to my doctor today," and they're still running it past people. They're running it past people at the coffee shop. They said this. Well, that didn't. So it's actually going to help the doctor to say, hey, this has been pushed against Google, right? Dr. Google, essentially, and now we can make a better decision. And the person will probably say, all right, I believe this decision because it was backed by AI, not just this one doctor's opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And I think physicians do well when they're presented with real data and real options. So medicine is an art and a science, right? So we basically present them with the information in a consolidated, easy to digest way. And then they use their art to figure out, okay, what are we going to do from here with all of these different methodologies or treatments suggested to them. So I think that's true. And we've seen that happen with medications. Physicians used to have to remember this catalog of medications and they prescribe the same 10 meds all the time. Right now, with a formulary and evidence behind the efficacy of particular meds presented with the options, they pick the ones that will work. So we're really trying to look at it the same way. It's a different mode of treatment, but it's still a treatment. So one of the things, any of you who would like to continue this dialogue with Alex and I at any point in time, please feel free. We're on LinkedIn, so you can message us on LinkedIn, and we'll contact you and get back to you if you have any other comments or any thoughts that will help us out with our move forward. We definitely would like to hear from you as well. And, one of the things that we do want to do is make sure that, once we get data and things sort of moving forward, that we do publish our findings as well to the general community. Because I think, in the effort of transparency in the work that we're doing, it's really good to let folks know exactly what's going on. As we looked at some of some of these therapeutics and their randomized clinical trials, it really was digging very deep to find that information. So we'd like to make that information a little bit more transparent to everybody in the medical community. Any other questions or final comments? All right. Well, thank you for your attention. And again, if you want to reach out to us, please do so on LinkedIn, and then we'll talk to you personally as well.
Yeah, and additionally, we are going to share this recording. So I will post it in my profile post. So just to find out in LinkedIn, Alex Giri. I think that most of you are my LinkedIn connections that I send out the email. But anyways, I'm going to send out email that if you're in my email list. If not, then just find out me in the LinkedIn. I will post it as a recording of this webinar. And then that will be a good place to start. We can continue today's topic and then discuss about what actually we are literally actually interesting to make this happen in real life. So it's a starting point, and then who knows in the 10 years later, and the Hoda and me and the years the starting to make this happen. Nobody knows, right? So it's just fantastic. And then we want to continue this one, and then it will just start. Okay. Okay.
And wait a minute for Mike McGuire. The all of our APIs are Fire, Smart on Fire, and HL7.
All righty.
Okay, so
Yes, ma'am.
we can chat. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank
Take care.
you. Take care. Bye bye.